Sometimes you think you're exactly where you're meant to be, with the right person, until your world collapses in just a few seconds. Celia Morgan, 24, was a simple woman with simple dreams, a stable job, a few close friends, and a love that would last. She worked as a receptionist at a high-end hotel in New York, where her professional smile masked the weariness she carried every day. But through it all, Celia believed in love. The one thing she gave her heart to completely, especially when it came to Josh Evans. Josh was her first love. They met through a hotel guest when Josh came to check in for a corporate event. He was witty, charming, and had a way of making people feel special. Their love blossomed quietly and effortlessly, a love Celia believed would one day end with a ring on her finger. Today marked 1 year of their relationship. Celia had planned everything: the soft blue dress Josh once complimented, the tiny earrings he gave her for her last birthday, and a small cake from his favorite bakery, ordered through a friend. He said he's busy till the afternoon, but would call me after. Celia smiled as she told Lena, her best friend and neighbor. Then come to the mall with us for a bit. You might find something cute to wear for tonight, Maddie insisted. Celia finally agreed to join Lena, Maddie, and Chris at the nearby shopping center, thinking it would help pass the time. But none of them expected that a casual stroll would soon unravel everything Celia thought she knew. Celia, don't freak out, but... Lena grabbed her arm, voice barely a whisper. And there, under the bright lights of the food court, sat Josh, with a girl Celia didn't recognize. The girl laughed brightly, while Josh gently held a spoon to her lips. That soft, caring gesture, the very same she once believed was hers alone. Celia froze. Her eyes widened, her chest tightened. "Are you okay, Celia?" Chris asked softly, but she didn't respond. The image of the man she loved feeding another woman burned into her like a blade. On their anniversary, of all days, Celia felt like a complete joke. She walked forward, no thinking, no hesitating. "Happy anniversary, Josh," she said bitterly, standing right at their table. Josh jerked in shock, eyes shifting from relaxed to horrified. The girl blinked. Celia stood tall, her pride intact, but her heart bleeding. "I can explain," Josh stammered. Celia didn't wait for excuses. She removed the bracelet he once gave her, dropped it on the table, and walked away, leaving the two cheaters in stunned silence. 1 year of love, destroyed in seconds. And she had no idea that later tonight, in her drunken rage, one misdirected message would change her fate forever. That night, after returning from the mall, Celia didn't cry. She sat silently on the couch, clutching a cold beer can Chris handed her. Lena and Maddie were nearby, eyes full of concern, but neither dared to speak. Celia didn't want comfort. She didn't need advice. She needed to be angry. "How could he do this? Today of all days," she growled, the alcohol starting to seep into her bloodstream. "I loved him like crazy, and he..." "Celia, maybe slow down on the drinking," Lena whispered, but Celia just let out a dry, bitter laugh. "No, I've never been drunk, but tonight I want to be. I want to forget his face." No one stopped her. They knew she needed this. And in the midst of her fury, Celia did the first thing that came to mind. She grabbed her phone and started texting Josh. Message after message, pure rage, pure venom. "You liar. I wasted 1 year on you. You disgust me. I hope you choke on the food you fed her with. I regret ever loving you. You pathetic cheater." Each word felt like a dagger aimed at the man who shattered her heart. She didn't stop at 5 or 10, she sent hundreds. By the time her fingers slowed down, Celia noticed her phone screen was blurry. Were those tears? She wasn't sure anymore. She set her phone aside and leaned back on the couch. Her heart still ached, but she felt lighter, at least for the moment. Until the next morning, sunlight streamed through her curtains, waking Celia with a pounding headache. The apartment was a mess. Empty cans, food wrappers, and clutter everywhere. Her phone still blinked with notifications. 12 unread messages, 5 missed calls from an unknown number. Eyes still foggy, Celia opened the first message. Whoever you are, I don't appreciate being insulted 133 times in a single night. I've already traced your number. Right now, I know your full name, your job, your address. Miss Celia Morgan. She froze. What the hell? Each word stabbed at her with a cold, sharp edge. She didn't know who this person was, but he knew everything about her. Her heart pounded. She scrolled up through her messages. She hadn't texted Josh. Celia screamed, loud enough to startle Lena awake from the couch. What happened? Lena panicked. I sent the messages to the wrong person. They weren't sent to Josh. It was someone else. Celia gasped, pacing. And that person? He knows me. Knows where I live, where I work. Maddie and Chris stormed into the room, now fully alert. Celia shakily handed them the phone. The 4 of them read in stunned silence as more messages appeared. I don't take disrespect lightly. You think it's just a joke? 133 messages full of hate? Expect a call and answer it. And as if summoned by fate, Celia's phone began to ring. She couldn't bring herself to answer. The ringtone echoed steadily, ominously. Pick it up, Chris urged. No, don't. Maddie held her arm. This feels wrong. But then, silence, followed by another message. You don't want to talk? Fine, but we will talk soon. Celia collapsed back into the couch, her face pale. All of this because of one wrong message. But she didn't yet know that the man who received that message would become the one person fate meant for her all along. Celia had never experienced panic like this before. Within hours of waking up, a complete stranger knew everything about her. Her full name, her job, her home address, even old photos she thought only she had. This can't be real, she whispered, hands trembling, as she scrolled to the next message from the unknown number. I know you live on Lexington Avenue, apartment 5B, East Building. Celia almost dropped her phone. How could he possibly know that? Was he a hacker? Who is he, some psycho? A stalker? Maddie asked, while Chris tried to block the number. Don't, Lena said firmly. Blocking him might make things worse. If he's really dangerous, he could show up at our door. Right then the phone rang, the same unknown number. Celia froze. The ringtone played, slow, deliberate, like the person on the other end had all the time in the world. Her heart thudded with every beat of the music. Pick it up, Chris whispered. We're here. You're not alone. Celia took a deep breath and answered. She pressed the phone to her ear, heart racing. Finally, a deep, cold voice said, Took you long enough to answer. That voice sent chills down her spine. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, but that made it all the more terrifying. Who are you? She stammered, trying to steady her voice. Damian Callister, he replied curtly, and yes, I'm the one who received 133 hateful messages from you last night. The room fell silent. I'm sorry, I sent them by mistake. Oh, I'm aware, but tell me, does a normal person accidentally send over 100 messages full of insults to the wrong number in under 2 hours? Celia had no response. Her throat tightened. You have 2 choices, Miss Morgan, Damian continued, his voice calm. 1, meet me in person. 2, let my attorney handle this. She shut her eyes. Her heart pounded like a drum. One tiny mistake. One misdirected message. And now, she was about to come face to face with a powerful, mysterious man. Damian Callister. Celia set her phone down, her hands still trembling. The room seemed to shrink around her, the air thick, like something was squeezing the breath from her lungs. All sound vanished except for the wild thumping in her chest. She had never spoken to someone so calm, yet so terrifying. That man, Damian Callister, Didn't shout, didn't curse, didn't even threaten directly. But every word, every pause, carried the weight of total control. "We will meet. I want to look you in the eyes when we talk." His voice still echoed in her mind. Celia looked at Lena, Maddie, and Chris. All silent, but their eyes mirrored hers, fear and confusion. Meet him? She didn't have a choice. Not meeting him might be worse. She took a deep breath, mind spinning. Somewhere deep down, she already knew that meeting would be the last moment her life remained ordinary. 3:00 p.m., a quiet cafe on 11th Street. Celia sat curled up in her chair, hands wrapped around a now cold coffee. She had arrived 20 minutes early, not out of eagerness, but pure anxiety. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped. Her eyes darted to the clock. Then, right on time, he walked in. Damian Collister entered like he owned the room. Black suit, no tie, crisp white shirt with 2 buttons undone. Slightly tousled black hair, cold eyes that scanned the cafe like the world around him was merely background noise. Celia held her breath. This was the man she had accidentally bombarded with 133 angry messages. The man who could, with one phone call, destroy her life. He found her eyes, no smile, no nod. He simply walked over and took the seat across from her, like they were longtime business partners. "Ms. Morgan," Damian began, voice low and firm, "you know who I am. And I know you've been scared." Celia gave a timid nod, unable to speak. "Before you say anything," he continued, "I'll get straight to the point. I don't have time for repeated apologies. I don't want an apology. I want a deal." Celia blinked. "A deal?" "Yes." He leaned back, eyes never leaving hers. "There's a woman, her name is Blair, who's been pursuing me. Her family is tied to one of my company's biggest partners. They want me to settle down." "I'm not interested." "And what does that have to do with me?" she croaked. "I need a fake girlfriend," Damian said as casually as if discussing a stock report. "Someone to appear with me at meetings, events, particularly my cousin's engagement party this weekend. Just a few appearances. I'll pay you." Celia thought she misheard. "You mean me? You're a fit. Because I know everything about you, and because you owe me." He smirked faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm not an actress," she whispered. "You don't have to be. Just show up, smile, and hold my hand, like a real relationship. And if I refuse..." Damian paused, then leaned forward, voice dropping. "Then I'll hand over every single message, from top down, location tagged, to my legal team. And when it hits court, you'll be charged with harassment, cyber abuse, and defamation." Celia froze. This was blackmail, or something close. A part of her wanted to flee, but another part, the part still shaky and lost, whispered, "What's the worst that could happen?" "How much would you pay?" she asked before she could stop herself. Damian smiled, this time for real. 10 times your current monthly salary for every appearance." Celia swallowed. It was more money than she'd ever seen, enough to cover 3 months' rent, enough to stop working overtime, enough to rethink her decision. "I need to think," she said, trying to sound calm. "Not too long," Damian stood. "You have 24 hours. And with that, he walked away, just like he arrived. No goodbye, no glance back. Celia sat frozen. A stranger, an unthinkable offer, a risk, or an opportunity. She didn't know. All she knew was, if she said yes, her life would never be the same again. Celia took nearly 23 hours to decide. She paced around her small apartment like a hamster on a wheel, thinking herself into circles. In the end, with only an hour left before Damian's deadline, she sent a simple message. "I agree." Minutes later, he replied, "Good, be ready. I'll pick you up at 6 p.m. Saturday. Dress code, formal." Saturday came faster than she expected. Standing before the mirror, Celia adjusted her cream cocktail dress. Simple, elegant, knee-length. Maddie had helped with her hair, curling it slightly and pinning one side with a subtle clip. Celia stared at her reflection in disbelief. She was about to play the role of Damien Callister's girlfriend? At exactly 6 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up in front of her building. Damien stepped out, sharp in a deep navy suit. He nodded at her with a glance that wasn't surprised but seemed mildly pleased. "You look decent," he said, opening the door for her. Celia said nothing. She wasn't sure how to respond. The engagement party was held at a grand estate in the suburbs, golden lights blanketing the trees, soft violin music playing in the distance. Celia felt like she had entered another world, elegant, distant, and intimidating. As soon as they stepped out, Damien gently offered his arm. The touch startled her slightly, but she didn't pull away. "Remember," he murmured beside her ear, "you're my girlfriend tonight. They'll watch. They'll judge. Don't break character." Celia swallowed hard and nodded. Inside, the party was dazzling. Men in tuxedos, women in floor-length gowns, jewels that looked like they belonged in museums. Celia had never stepped into a space like this. "Woo!" a male voice exclaimed as they approached the main table. "There you are, Damien. And who's this?" "This is Celia," Damien said, "my girlfriend." Every eye turned to her, some curious, some surprised, some skeptical, but Celia smiled. She kept her hand on Damien's arm. She did exactly what the role required. She didn't know what would come after this party. All she knew was the performance had officially begun. Celia thought she only needed to play her role well. Smile when introduced, shake hands at the right time, nod politely, and stay charming beside Damien like a well-trained shadow. But it wasn't that simple. From the stares around her, she knew her every move was under scrutiny. But what truly unsettled her wasn't the crowd, it was Damien. He wasn't cold or distant like she expected. During the party, Damien kept her close, introduced her effortlessly and with grace. He didn't let her drown in conversations full of business jargon and subtle arrogance. He leaned in, whispering translations or quick explanations when the topic turned too elite or in French. He shielded her from judgment with a calm that felt strangely genuine. Celia began to feel comfortable. When the music shifted to a softer tune, someone asked her to dance. But before she could respond, Damien stepped forward, placed a hand on her back, and said, "Sorry, she's my girlfriend. I'll be the one dancing with her." She blinked, stunned. But Damien took her hand and led her to the floor like it was the most natural thing. His hand settled gently on her waist. His other hand held hers. His eyes locked with hers. "You don't have to be so stiff," he murmured. "It's just a basic waltz." Celia swallowed. Her face warmed. In that moment, she felt incredibly small next to his quiet confidence, and even more surprised by her own heart. It beat far too fast. After the party, on the drive home, Celia remained silent. Damien glanced at her. "You did well tonight." "Thanks," she replied softly. "I just tried not to ruin anything." "You didn't ruin a thing," he said. "In fact, for a second I thought—" He paused. "Thought what?" Celia looked up. "Nothing," Damien said, pressing his lips together. "Forget it." Celia tilted her head at him. In the dim car light for the first time, she saw something unguarded in him. Not the cold, calculating man who threatened her, not the CEO in control, just a man with eyes that looked both lonely and sad. She turned away. Her heart stuttered again. In the days that followed, Celia accompanied Damien to more events, dinners with partners, small functions, even lunch with his close friends. Every time, he arrived on time, opened the door, asked what she wanted to eat, whether she was cold. Simple things, but they felt more real than any line in the script. Once, when she was under the weather, he personally drove her home and ordered the exact medication she usually took. "How did you know I'm allergic to paracetamol?" she asked. "I read your medical records," he replied. "Better safe than sorry." Celia laughed, but her heart didn't. She couldn't tell when it started, but she wasn't pretending anymore, not when he touched the small of her back, not when he smiled like he meant it, not when his voice softened each time he said her name. Celia started to feel afraid that what she was feeling wasn't part of the act, and even more afraid because she didn't know if Damien was acting or not. Celia didn't know when she started waiting for Damien's messages. Each morning, when her phone buzzed, she would rush to check, and if the sender was D. Callister, her heart fluttered. Not for business, not for obligation, but something else, something she couldn't name. They were still pretending, she reminded herself daily. But it seemed only she remembered. Damien didn't. He remained thoughtful, if not more than before. He started calling her Celia instead of Miss Morgan. He remembered she took her coffee black with oat milk instead of dairy. He asked about her day, work at the hotel, noisy neighbors, even her new hairstyle. Those little things were the most dangerous, because the more Damien cared, the less Celia could control her own heart. That evening, they attended a charity gala for children with autism, a glamorous event filled with tech moguls and financiers. Celia wore a pale green dress, the same color Damien once said matched your eyes. She hadn't meant to care, but she chose it anyway. While Damien chatted with board members, Celia struck up a conversation with a young guest named Ethan, a friendly software engineer. "You must be someone really special," Ethan said, smiling, "to get Damien Callister to smile like that." Celia laughed awkwardly. "I think he's just playing the role of a good boyfriend." "Oh," Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like quite the performance." Before Celia could respond, she caught sight of Damien across the room, his gaze fixed on them like a spotlight. He didn't look amused or polite. Seconds later, he approached, placed a hand on Celia's back. "Evening, Ethan," he said coolly. "Mind if I borrow my girlfriend for a moment?" Ethan chuckled nervously. "Of course." Damien led her out to the balcony. For a moment, they stood in silence. Then he spoke. "What was he saying to you?" "Me, just casual conversation," Celia replied with a sigh. "I didn't like the way he looked at you." Celia turned to him. "Are you jealous?" Damien said nothing. She had never seen him like this, his face a little tight, voice lower, eyes startlingly honest. "This is all pretend, right?" she asked softly. Damien met her gaze. "Yes, but that doesn't mean I feel..." "Nothing." His words hit like ice in the summer heat. Celia felt her heart twist and race all at once. It was as if some unseen force was slowly winding her heart tighter, beat by beat, breath by breath, with his eyes holding hers. That night, lying in bed, Celia couldn't sleep. The wind whispered through her window, but her thoughts swirled like a storm. She thought of Damien, his hand on her back, that look in his eyes, and especially his words. "It doesn't mean I feel nothing." She wondered if this was all fake, then why did it hurt when he smiled at someone else? Why did she cling to every detail he remembered about her? Why did she miss his voice when he called her name, softer than anyone else had? She didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing. Her heart was leaning toward this fake man more honestly than it ever had before. Celia sat alone on a bench in the small park near her apartment. Autumn had arrived. The breeze was crisp, and the leaves had turned golden and red, but she barely noticed. Her mind was consumed by one undeniable truth. She had fallen in love with Damien Callister. Not just pretend, not a passing feeling, but real, deep, and terrifying. She loved his quiet ways, the way he remembered every small detail about her, the softness in his eyes when he looked at her, even when his words stayed cold. She even loved the silences between them, when nothing was said, yet her heart still beat wildly. And yet, she was scared. Scared that if she stayed any longer, she'd be the one left broken. Damien might care, might protect, but who's to say he truly loved her back? She was just a character in his plan, a fake girlfriend to keep Blair at bay, but her feelings? They'd become too real. Celia sighed and typed out a message. "Damien, I think We should end this. I can't keep pretending if it's not real. Thank you for everything." She hit send. Oh, reply. No message, no call. 2 nights later, her phone rang after midnight. It was Nathan, Damien's assistant. "Celia, please, you need to come to the hospital. Damien, he was in a car accident." She froze. "What?" "He drove after drinking. He's physically okay, but the moment he woke up, he asked for you. Only you." Celia didn't hesitate. She threw on clothes and took a cab to the hospital in the dead of night. The hospital room was stark white. Damien lay there, bandaged head, left arm in a sling, eyes shut, but when Celia stepped inside, he opened his eyes. Weak, but focused. "Celia," his voice was hoarse, broken. She rushed to his side, eyes burning. "Why would you do this?" Damien gave a small, pained smile. "I just needed to drive, to forget you." "And crashing into a wall seemed like the best way," she choked. "I lost you," he said, voice barely audible. "I didn't realize I loved you until you left." Celia stood frozen. "At first, yes, it was fake, but day by day, I couldn't detach myself. I started waiting for your texts. I missed you when we didn't meet. I felt joy when you smiled and pain when you looked sad. I'm not pretending anymore, Celia. I can't." Silence hung heavy in the air. Celia's heart thundered. Damien looked into her eyes. Even weary, his gaze was unwavering. "I love you." 3 simple words. But to Celia, it meant everything. Tears streamed down her face. She took his hand, clutching it tight. "I love you too. I was scared. I thought I was just a part of your act. But now I know." "I love you," Damien smiled. For the first time in days, a real, tired smile. Celia stayed by his side all night. For the first time since everything began, they were no longer pretending. A week after the accident, Damien was still in the hospital for observation. Celia barely left his side. They talked more now. No more scripts, no more roles, just the 2 of them. 2 people, once guarded, slowly learning how to heal together. One afternoon, with sunlight slanting through the hospital window, Damien spoke softly. "Celia, there's something I need to tell you." She looked up, placing her book down. "What is it?" He stared at her for a long time. His eyes no longer held that cold edge, only the quiet gaze of someone who had been carrying a truth for too long. "Blair was never as big a problem as I made it seem." He paused. "It was all a pretext." Celia blinked. "A pretext?" "I created the situation to keep you close." She froze. "I knew about you before the misdirected texts." "What?" "I saw your profile when the security system flagged the flood of messages. I traced the number and your hotel staff file came up. And I..." Damien's voice lowered. "I couldn't look away. I planned to ignore it after a warning, but I was drawn in." Celia was silent, not out of anger, but because her heart was pounding so loudly it didn't feel real. "I fabricated the deal, the public appearances, everything just to prolong the time I had with you. I loved you before we ever met face to face." She covered her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes. This time, "I thought I was the only fool." Damien let out a soft laugh, then pulled out a small black box from the hospital bedside drawer. "I may be a fool, but at least I know what I want." He opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, not flashy, but it shimmered like the look in his eyes. "Celia Morgan, will you marry me?" She burst into tears, nodded again and again. Yes, Damien, I will." With his uninjured hand, he slipped the ring onto her finger. They embraced, smiles and tears blending together. It wasn't a perfect promise, but it was real, from the heart. 3 months later, they were married in a small garden behind Damien's best friend's house. No extravagance, no crowd, just a few close ones, white flowers, and spring sunlight. Celia wore a simple white dress, her hair swept into a soft bun. Damien waited at the altar, eyes gentle and full of warmth. When they said their vows, looking into each other's eyes, no one remembered the old act. Because from that moment on, everything was real. The following summer, Celia sat in a sun-drenched room, one hand resting gently on her rounded belly, now in its 7th month, carrying a small, growing life inside. She was pregnant with a baby boy. Damien had chosen the name early on, Aiden, which meant little fire. Because he's the new light in my life, Damien had said when they found out, a warmth I never thought I'd be blessed with. Since that day, Damien had transformed, softer, quieter, and more attentive in every way. He woke up early to make her ginger tea, learned to cook vegetable soup from his private chef, and even practiced breathing exercises with her just to be ready for the big day. Celia often joked that the cold, calculating man from that first phone call no longer existed, but he was still Damien Callister. Only now, his heart had softened because of love. One quiet weekend, they went for a picnic in a park just outside the city, shaded by old trees, soft grass, and a still lake that reflected the drifting clouds. Damien spread out a red and white checkered blanket beneath the trees and gently helped Celia sit down. Next to them was a basket he'd packed himself, sandwiches, salad, juice, and neatly sliced fruit, all her pregnancy favorites. "You brought 3 boxes of mango again?" Celia laughed. "You said he kicks every time you eat them," Damien smiled, placing his hand gently on her belly. They both chuckled. It was a quiet kind of laughter, deep, easy, familiar. Every moment together now felt precious, not for any grand reason, but because it was simple. No contracts, no pretending, no roles to play. Just 2 people, and soon 3, on a peaceful afternoon. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over Celia's hair, she leaned her head against Damien's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her and gazed out over the lake. "Do you think, if I hadn't sent that message by mistake, would we still have met?" she asked softly. Damien squeezed her hand. "Maybe not," he said, "but I believe if it's fate, the right person will always find their way to you." Celia closed her eyes and smiled. Not every love story begins perfectly. Some begin with chaos or an error, but sometimes it's that very mistake that brings you to exactly where and who you're meant to find. And she knew no matter what the future held, with Damien and Aiden, she already had everything. Late afternoon, the sunset stretched across the grass like golden silk. Celia leaned her head on Damien's shoulder, her breath sinking with the breeze. Damien gently placed a hand over her belly, where Aiden was peacefully growing. Each tiny movement inside brought a new light to his eyes. Like nothing else mattered in the world but that moment. "I never thought happiness could come from something this simple," Celia whispered. "Neither did I," Damien replied warmly. "I thought my life would always be filled with contracts, clauses, and emotionless appointments. Until you." Celia smiled, closing her eyes, letting the golden light soak everything around her. They didn't begin like other couples, not with a look, a chance meeting, or a sweet twist of fate. They began with a wrong number. A small mistake, seemingly meaningless, became the start of the most meaningful thing in their lives. Celia gently squeezed Damien's hand. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, softly, like a promise for all that lay ahead. And in that moment, she knew, even a wrong number, if it's meant to be, the right person will always find their way to you.